Hello there, Year 10. Okay, our next question is, are there any alternatives to revelation? Now, I know some of you have been thinking about this in your lessons and thinking about, well, if theists think this, is there any alternative to thinking like that? Well, we're going to look at 6 reasons why any number of the revelations might not have been the case, what alternatives that we can actually try and give. And then we're going to look at applying those to an actual revelation, and you might be able to apply them to more than one, but for just this purpose of this video we're going to apply them to different revelations. Now, the first one is the idea of the God of the gaps. Now, if you think about it, if you remember back to the first unit, the God of the gaps was the idea that when we don't understand something fully, we put God in that gap. Like a miracle, we decide that actually, well, it is a miracle because we don't understand how it works, so therefore it must be God's actions in the world. Now, we could apply this one to Sally McCloy. Sally McCloy being cured in Lourdes. What may well have happened is that it's just something that we don't understand yet. She was actually cured of cancer, but it might be something that might be unknown yet to medical science, something like a mind over matter or something like that, that actually enabled her to be cured. So we can add an alternative to the idea of Lourdes and the miracle of Sally McCloy by saying, well, why put God in that gap? Why say God is revealing God's self? Why can't it just be an event that we don't understand yet? The second one is that the idea of being intoxicated in some way. Maybe that's via drugs or alcohol. Now, I would apply this one to St. Paul. St. Paul's on the road to Damascus. Now, he was the only one who actually witnessed the event and had any experience of what actually was going on, whilst there were other people there. So, if we wanted to provide an alternative to that, we could say, well, it's actually the fact that he was under the influence of some kind of drug or alcohol or some elements of mind-altering substance that enabled him to see a vision when actually there wasn't a vision there. So the second one there, drugs, alcohol, some kind of mind-altering effect. The third one is wishful thinking. Now, many theists wishfully think that God will reveal God's self to people. So actually, that could be the reason for people claiming to have a revelation. For example, a special revelation, the resurrection. Now, after Jesus died, of course, his apostles would have interpreted some of the things that he would have said and wishfully thought that Jesus actually rose from the dead and fulfilled some of the words that he spoke. So it's wishful thinking. That could be a possible alternative. You could also use the same for Nicky Cruz. Nicky Cruz, a gangster, would wishfully think that his life would change and was able to actually provide that with the religious revelation, general revelation of the man speaking to him, of David Wilkerson speaking to him, and the Bible story that he read. The fourth one is the idea of a mass delusion. Now, a mass delusion is the idea that lots of people who are at the same event or a similar thing act in certain ways that they wouldn't normally do. For example, at a football match, people often act in certain ways that they wouldn't normally do. And you could say the same about a event like the ones that Benny Hinn takes part in. And you can see that on the videos that are there, that all these people falling over. Would those people have really done that? Or are they acting because of everybody else acting in this way? An idea of a mass delusion, that everybody becomes worried that they're going to not fit in if they don't do what everybody else does. So we could say that the idea of Benny Hinn and mass delusion. Or number 5, could the revelation have been a hoax all along? Just a fake, just something that we didn't really believe in, but people actually, because one person believes in it, another says they do, and another says they do, and eventually it all becomes too out of hand to not say that. Now, many people say that about Benny Hinn, because of his idea of it maybe being a mass delusion, that also the revelation is a hoax, that it isn't really real, that it's just people making it up. And you could say the same about a lot of things, like prayer, for example. Now, prayer, whilst some people swear by it and say it's a really, really powerful thing, some people might actually say, no, it's not. It's all a hoax. And when we say when God answers a prayer, oh, it must be God. But when God doesn't answer a prayer, then we blame something else. So another hoax maybe actually within prayer itself. Now, the idea again, number 6, is the idea of the numinous, ordinary events seemingly appearing to be absolutely remarkable in God. Now, the numinous is just the way the world is. We have this ability as human beings to sense that these things are amazing, that they're out of this world. And in lessons or in the video I spoke to you about the universe and how amazing it is, but that's the way that it is. Why do we have to read into the fact that it may be a God or God revealing God's self to human beings? Why the numinous is just there and is amazing? Because it's not something we see every day. Or even ordinary events like our conscience. Now, again, in Unit 1 we looked at how the conscience, whilst some people believe it's inspired by God, actually possibly isn't, that it's actually inspired by normal events, by your parents and by school and things like that. They're actually teaching you what's right and wrong, society deciding what's right and wrong for you. So therefore, that actually is in itself not a revelation, but actually just your normal understanding of right and wrong, speaking to yourself in, the guilty feeling or the good feeling that you actually get. So, those are our 6 alternatives to revelation, ladies and gentlemen. So, you've got number 1, God of the gaps, number 2, drugs, or some mind-altering things. Wishful thinking, number 3, the idea that people wishfully think for these things to happen. 4, a mass delusion with Benny Hinn and lots of people falling over because everybody else is. 5, is it a hoax? Things like prayer, people making it up and saying that actually I was cured by the power of prayer where it wasn't that. Or finally, number 6, ordinary events that we put an extraordinary meaning to. Things like our conscience that speaks to us every day, or the numinous. Those are our 6 alternatives to revelation. So, ladies and gentlemen, is it God who actually performs revelations and reveals God's self to people? Or is it one of those things there, one of those 6 ideas that actually are alternatives to revelation? At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think?